pandemic of COVID-19 came Ukraine war. The whole world is facing something called a growing global inflation. No country has been able to tame it. There are countries facing bankruptcy. Our neighbors, Sri Lanka has taken the blow on their chin. It is not the first time that an unpredictable Putin emerged, right? 2008 Georgia, Crimea 2014. Time and again, it was shown to the world that the only thing which is predictable about Putin is his unpredictability. Even then, West has let it happen. Is it a serious leadership deficit on the West part?
Well, I think we have to squarely blame what has happened in Ukraine on one person and one person alone, and that is Vladimir Putin. He chose to invade this country. And sometimes in international affairs, sometimes it's on the one hand, on the other hand, or it's very complicated and difficult. This is not complicated. This is not difficult. Ukraine is a sovereign, independent country. He invaded the entire country. He has been pummeling it with artillery. He's been killing thousands of people. It is an appalling act, and it needs to be condemned the world over. And as you say, it has these terrible consequences, not just for Ukraine, but for everywhere, because of the huge increase in oil and gas prices, because of the huge increase in food prices. So everyone is going to be affected. But ultimately, he is to blame. Could the West have done more? I would argue that if you look at the response, the unity that's been shown from different European countries, the strength of NATO, the supply of weapons and aid and help to Ukraine, I think that the response has been very positive. And we have to keep going, because we cannot let Putin win in Ukraine. We cannot let this stand, because if we live in a world with no rules, if we live in a world where people can get away with things like this, it will become less safe for everybody. So I think you're right to point to 2008 as a moment when Putin did similar things with Georgia and there wasn't a strong enough response. I would argue in 2014 there was a better response. I was sitting around the European Council table. We put on sanctions, we put on pressure, we supported the Ukrainians. But clearly we need to do more, and we need to keep up the pressure. And I hope that we'll be able to build the biggest international coalition of condemnation of what Putin has done.
So we're dealing with something which is inexplicable, unpredictable, called Mr. Putin. During your 6 years of prime ministership, you tried to forge a relationship with Putin. You saw him closely as a man. Has he changed since then?
Well, if you become prime minister of a country like the United Kingdom, you have to try to forge relationships with everybody, including people you don't agree with, because you can be clear about those areas you don't agree, but you try to have a relationship where on things like climate change or trade or fighting terrorism, you try to see if you can build a relationship. Has he changed? I think we're dealing with a Putin who is much more dangerous, much more irrational, much more aggressive. He was always totally against the values we have of democracy and rights and rule of law and the things we believe in, but much more dangerous, much more, as you say, unpredictable, and potentially destabilizing, and we have to take that into account.
He's not